Hi, and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place for creatives like you to learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Imagine a world where possibilities are endless, where innovation knows no bounds, and where the human spirit soars to new heights. Would you believe me if I told you that place resides within each and every one of us? The reason we don't always recognize it is because we view creativity as a skill that allows us to color inside the lines or create masterpieces with words or with paint. And if we can't wield a brush or strum a chord, we automatically discount our creativity. The truth is, creativity, that magical spark that ignites innovation and fuels human progress, is a force that resides within each and every one of us. When we listen to a piece of music, we connect with the emotions and the creativity of the composer. Whether it's the melancholy of a slow jazz tune or the exuberance of a pop hit, we find ourselves within the music experiencing emotions that just transcend words. And for those who are composers or songwriters, music is the ultimate canvas. It's a language that can convey complex emotions and stories without uttering a single word. Through the interplay of notes, melodies, harmonies, and rhythms, creators can share their innermost thoughts and feelings. And musicians who perform live or in a studio setting are channels for that emotional and creative essence of a composition. They infuse it with their interpretation, making each performance unique. And this process of translating creativity into a tangible, audible form is both a technical and emotional endeavor. And today's guest is a singer-songwriter, an author, and a master coach who has created a collaborative coaching process that helps even the most unexperienced creatives process and express emotions, loss, or ambitions through the creation of music. Through her personalized program, Leslie Rohonczy meets you right where you are and helps you to nurture the creativity that's lurking inside, just waiting to make its mark on the world. And I'm excited to learn more about her program, and I hope you are too. So let's welcome Leslie to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. I'm delighted to be with you guys today.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be so great. Music is such, like I said earlier, a universal language. And so just to be able to talk about it and explore it. But before we jump into the technical work you do, tell us a little bit about yourself and your musical background, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I've been a musician probably all my life. I think it was born into me, and I think my family early on recognized that it was something that could certainly be an interest, if not a passion / obsession. But the songwriting piece didn't really happen for me. I mean, I've been a musician my whole life. I started off on piano, went to saxophone, percussion, and actually now I'm learning ukulele and the theremin, which, by the way, is the most frustratingly complex instrument in the world. But I have been musical all my life and artistic as well. I paint as well. But it didn't really, the songwriting piece didn't really open up for me until I became a certified master coach through the Integral Coaching Canada method, which is a very, very deep and long process, but super deep. And it cracked me open, as it does. I mean, anybody that goes through to become a certified coach, it will crack you open. It's just part of the deal. And what I found inside was this nugget of treasure that I had no idea was there. And it was learning how to trust that intuition and to allow myself to be a conduit. And it's very similar, music and coaching. In fact, we use that conduit experience in music, and I'm sure in painting and writing and etc., to receive that inspiration that lives, I think, somewhere up in the ether and is just waiting for somebody who's an open conduit to receive, and those of us that have learned or stumbled upon the ability to receive, it comes through us, sometimes like a fire hose. And it's the same thing with coaching. When I'm, I coach a lot of executives, C-suite level. I also coach, emerging leaders and regular people who are just trying to find their way in the world. And it's the same process of opening myself up as a conduit and allowing myself to hear the whispers of what really wants to become in the world, and so I offer that to clients, but that ability to kind of receive, I think, is one of those pieces of intuition that if we can connect to, that's where our creativity springs from, really.
Oh, for sure. And now you've taken your love of music and your passion for coaching, and you've kind of combined those two things. So how did that come about, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So it came about a little bit accidentally, where I was, I had seen an acquaintance on social media, and I could tell that she was really struggling after the death of her mom. And excuse me. And she was really wrestling with it and reaching out and trying to kind of make sense of all of these emotions that she had. Not all of them were grief related. Some of them were, were other hard emotions, strong emotions. And so I just said, hey, you know what? It might be really beneficial to write a song together. And she took me up on it. And through that process of unpacking what it was that was so meaningful to her about the relationship with her mom, the kinds of things that she didn't get to say, the kinds of things that she wished she would have heard when her mom was alive, and what would she say to her now, and really getting underneath the grief to be able to name what's unnameable, and that's where real healing can start, is when we can dig deep into what is that thing that feels like a boulder in my road. When we can name it, then we got something to work with. Right? And so it came about as a result of that. And I've taken several people through it. But it is really such a transformational journey. And it's kind of hard to describe in a kind of an elevator pitch. Here's what it is. But it's a series of conversations with me and songwriting, where I'll ask you all of these deep coaching questions, and we will unpack all of that. And then we'll start writing lyrics to a song. And what comes out of people, I mean, it's incredible how deeply they dig, how much they trust the process, and what they pull out is absolute gold. And it helps move them from a current state of really wrestling with these deeply uncomfortable emotions that don't have a name, to a place where they've named it, they've unpacked it, they've processed it, they've moved through it, they've crawled out of the muck of it on the other side and went, whew, I made it, and now I have this thing. And the bonus is, once we've written it, we take them into the studio. I write the original songs. Now, I've written 8 albums of original music. And so I write the music to these songs, and the really brave ones, and all of them so far have been very brave. I give them some vocal coaching lessons, and they sing their own songs. And the fact that the ability to find their voice, literally and figuratively, is magic. It is absolute magic. And it transforms me as a musician, as a coach, as a human being, to be able to walk beside them in that and guide that kind of journey.
That's amazing. And, I'm a counselor by trade in the past. And so one of my biggest things I always say, if you'll journal your feelings, if you will journal your emotions, if you will put it into writing, it's amazing how much information you process, because it's literally, especially if you don't filter, right? If you don't put a filter on it and you just pour it out, with no structure or anything like that, your subconscious will start to process all of this stuff for you and with you. And then you go back and read it and you think, oh, wow. And I think what is so amazing and beautiful about what you do is that you take those really hard and potentially ugly parts of, whatever's going on inside, whether it's sad or angry or just messy, and you turn it into art. And I think that makes it so much better to process, because I can appreciate beauty more, or the ugly things more, when they're made beautiful, and it's not discounting those hard feelings and those hard places.
Right.
It's just putting a spin on it to say, hey, guess what? You are here to write these words, and therefore, you are on the other side of it. You're processing it. You're on the right path. And so I think that is just fantastic.
Well, you're honoring it too, right? You're honoring those uncomfortable emotions. And uncomfortable emotions are not bad, but we tend to categorize them as bad emotions, happy emotions and bad emotions. And they're not, they just are. And so that right brain activity of art or music or movement or yoga, stream of consciousness writing, which is what you described, that is all right brain activity that helps us process, because our right brain doesn't have the timeline. It doesn't keep the timeline. And so the emotions that we feel, when we felt them, that's how we feel them in our right brain, right? And that right brain activity lets you identify and move through them. So art in this form is so healing. But what people walk away with is greater than just a great song and a recording of them in the studio. They come out the other side of it transformed. And it's really such a deep honor for me to be able to accompany them on that. I really, it's just such a profound honor. I can't stress that enough.
And I love that it's probably an environment where there's a lot less pressure than when you're sitting in a counselor's chair or on a therapist's couch. There's a lot more freedom to express, because when you're sitting there, you're like, okay, I have 30 to 45 minutes to just pour my guts out and to talk about and process, and you say things and I say things. Whereas I'm thinking, have you seen there's been videos that come up on my social media of the rage rooms where people just go in and they just smash stuff, and they're, paint's flying, glasses flying, all that stuff, just to have that freedom. And so you're providing that same kind of environment where you don't have to worry about constraints. It's just like, you just go in there and be you. And I love that.
Definitely. And the smash rooms, those breaking rooms, in our process, it's really authentic emotion. That's what we're after, is that really, if you're feeling angry because somebody treated you poorly and now you don't have the chance for an apology from them because they're gone, for example, to be able to name that, to be able to sing that in a way that, there's a driving beat, because we pay attention not only to crafting a good song, but does it fit with the emotion that is being felt by the writer? Does it fit with the emotion that we're trying to provoke in the listener, right? How are we allowing that person to find their full voice in this topic? And so that's what we try to create. It's called prosody in a song, in songwriting, where the beat of the song has to match the intention behind it. The instrument choices have to match what we're trying to convey. Like if you have a really heavy topic and a bouncy little, 1-4-5 number, it's just not going to work. So we're trying to really, it's a very holistic way of holding the topic and the client.
That sounds like so much fun. I'm not even gonna lie. Like even if you're processing the hardest thing, it's like, all right, here we go, let's do it. That is so fun.
Thank you for noticing that, because that's one of the elements. I mean, yes, it's deep, hard stuff, but people have so much fun in this process. It is a really safe environment. It's a very positive experience, even though it's, some of those uncomfortable emotions. We make it super supportive, super safe, and a lot of fun.
What are some of the common challenges or holdbacks that people come in and they're just like, I don't know if I can really do this, but they show up anyway? Like, what are some of the common things that you deal with to break through?
I have no talent. I couldn't carry a tune in a paper bag. I've never been in a recording studio. How do I figure out what to write about? Like all of these things that are versions of I'm not good enough, which is such a common coaching topic. Whether it's inner critic or your, imposter response. And notice I don't call it imposter syndrome, because it should never have been pathologized. It was based on very shoddy research.
Agreed.
But that word stuck, which really ticks me off. So there's we show up as imposters in this process, and that goes away within the first 30 minutes, because we are all just in this together, tapping into creativity, which I kind of personify as an entity, as a fourth player in the room. Like there's myself and the client and Scott Walsh, who is the owner of Sound Creation Studio. And then there's music or creativity, or however you want to name her. I call her a her. But we invite music to come in and play with us. And there are 4 entities throughout that whole process. And the clients that go through this come to know music intimately, or come to know their creative muse intimately. And it really does feel like there are four of us together in this journey.
So do you start with, obviously they tell you their story, and you start walking through, okay, getting to know the person, but then do you immediately start with the music side? Do you immediately start with lyrics? Like what does your process look like?
Yeah, great question. The first meeting is just a 30-minute get to know you, answer your questions, let you know that you don't have to know anything about music in order to be ridiculously successful in this process, or safe, because some people are nervous. And then we start with writing the lyrics, where I'm asking you coaching questions, and it really is a 2-hour coaching session. But how being a therapist, you take notes, right, when clients are talking, and sometimes clients take notes and they go, oh wow, I didn't realize that was connected to this thing. Very similar process in that we're taking notes, and you should see the pages of words just all over the place. And then we're noticing themes, and I'm inviting them to notice themes together. I'm inviting them to go deeper on, what does this word mean to you? I saw something go across your face when you said that word. What is that story about? Right? What is so important in this story that you need to convey, and that you need to just process yourself first before you can share with the world? So we do 2 of those kinds of sessions. In the second one, I'm preparing them for the studio. So there's some vocal coaching, there's some nerve calming, there's some question answering, that kind of thing. And then we go to the studio for the next one. And it's, again, another very supportive process with Scott. And we just start creating the music. Now, in between those 2 sessions, I spend hours and hours creating a rough draft of the song. So I create the music, maybe some of the instrument selections, I figure out the tempo and get it all kind of organized to bring into the studio as a rough draft. Then when we're in the studio, we create, usually we start with the bass. We lay down a bass track, Scott plays that. And then he'll also play the drums and the guitars. I play all the keyboard stuff. I play the saxes or flute if that's what the song calls for. The client, if they're musical, great, we'll weave some of that, whatever their instrument is. But if they're not, it's okay. Anybody can shake a tambourine or a shaker, and we can put it in time. Anybody can sing their own song. I believe anybody can sing their own song. We have the tools to help you do that, right? So it's a very iterative kind of a process, and they've got a lot of say around the style of song, the genre that it goes in, a lot of different musical choices that we're offering up, that they get to decide, oh, I like this sound of the guitar, not that one so much.
That's fun. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you mentioned intuition earlier, and I know a lot of times the creative process, it is a lot of trial and error, right? Like, as an author, I write a few paragraphs and I edit them a few times, and I have other people read them and they edit them and I edit some more. And I think we get so caught up in this, I've got to make it right, trial and error, correct, delete, that kind of thing. But I think a creative person, and like I said earlier, I think everybody has creativity in them. I mean, otherwise you couldn't solve a problem. You have to be able to solve problems, and so therefore you are creative. But I think creatives have, especially those who focus on art, we have a lot more of an intuitive nature than we sometimes acknowledge. So talk about leaning into your intuition, especially with music and coaching, and why you think that's important for people to develop.
Yeah, it is so important to listen to those whispers of intuition, and even just to recognize that, first of all, there are whispers in the world. There are whispers that are coming at you every single day, and just experiment with one of them. If you're the kind of person that needs proof about that, just if one sort of wafts by and you kind of go, oh, I wonder what would happen if I did this, do it and see what happens. See if that leads you down a path that will open up rather than close down something for you. And the more you feel that opening up, follow it. Open up something else, and before you know it, you have this creative adventure that you're at the end of, and you look back and you go, how the heck did I get here? Oh, it was because I listened to that whisper way back there, right? I have a story to share about that process. And it starts off very sad, in that I was in the hospital with my father, who was dying with Parkinson's, and we were all surrounded his bed, and I held on his toes as he passed. And I live about an hour and a half away. So we were all with him when he died. And after a couple of hours, I had to drive back to where I live, to pick up clothes and papers and to come back. And on the way driving to my hometown, this song started downloading itself into my brain. This was that intuition piece that was just open because I was relaxed. And so you might find this happens to you in the shower, when you're out for a walk, when you're doing yoga, when you're falling asleep. This day, it happened to be, I was driving in my car after my dad had passed. And the song is called Water Turns to Mist. And it's about what happens when you die. Do you get to be everywhere all at once? Do you get to know every answer to every question you've ever had? Like, what happens to you? Where are you? And all of this stuff. But that song came so fast that it was catching it by the tail for me. I had to pull off the highway and grab a pen and a piece of paper. I think it was a receipt. And the song came in backwards, or it felt like it did. I wrote from the last word all the way to the first word, because it felt like it was catching it by the tail. And I've heard other creatives, and probably people in your audience, being creatives that they are, may have experienced this same thing. And I know that Elizabeth Gilbert talked about it in one of her books, called Big Magic, which you got to read that book. It's so good about creativity. But there was a poet, and the same thing happened to her. And it's like catching it by the tail, and you have to listen to those whispers, let it come through you, capture it, and then you get to play with it. Otherwise, it's going to come through you and go, oh, no takers here. And then it goes on to the next person. So that song came through me, and it is one of my most popular songs, in all of the songs that I've written. And well, I say written, but maybe let's call it one of the most popular songs I've ever received. Yeah.
That's amazing. Mine is usually like 3 a.m. I'll be turning over in bed, and all of a sudden my brain is like, guess what's next? Yeah. I was driving down the road, I think.
Tell me, do you have a pad of paper and a pen beside your bed?
I have my phone with my notes out. Like, it's right there. Like, every time I'm like, or a voice memo, I'm like, okay, don't wake anybody up, but this is
I've done that so many times.
I'm telling you, because no, it's too dark in the room to even try to write, and so I'm just like, we got to type it out as fast as it can happen. I've written some of my best stuff in the bed at 2 a.m. and it's crazy. And
it's because your brain is finally relaxed and open to receive. Yeah. When we've got all this stress around us and the busy pace of our lives and all of that, it takes up that cognitive space in our brain, and that takes up all the air in the room, right? We are not these big giant craniums walking around the world. We're emotional people who think. We're not thinkers who have emotions. And so when we're in that relaxed state, we can receive in a really creative way.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important, because even when you're awake and you think, I am sitting here and I'm working and I'm writing a book, and it's like, but you're also processing everything going on around you. You're processing what's coming, what's already happened. And so you're not in that place where you are completely focused. And so, as much as I don't appreciate 2 a.m. wake up calls, I appreciate 2 a.m. wake up calls. My brain does too, because it's like, you can be very productive, which I think is why creatives could very easily benefit from spending a lot more time meditating and closing out the world around them.
For sure. I have a daily meditation practice, and I've got some meditations that are on YouTube, actually, on my YouTube channel that I've recorded, and they seem to be popular. There's one, the most popular one, though, it's funny, is only 4 minutes long. I've got all these other long ones, and there are millions out there. But people, they want to go deep, but only for 4 minutes. And then they want to be off doing their things. So, it's funny.
I totally understand that. And, but at the same time, we would benefit greatly from taking way longer than 4 minutes sometimes. Because, 4 minutes, I can just clear my mind enough to think.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you've written a book and you're about to release the audio book for it. Is that correct? Is that what I understand?
The audiobook is out now, actually. And so
Okay.
in the books, this is what the book looks like, Coaching
Nice.
Life. And it's about navigating life's most common coaching topics. So I've had thousands of conversations with executives and leaders and employees and musicians and other creatives. And as you can imagine, themes emerge from all of those thousands of conversations. And what I've noticed in all these years of coaching is that there are 22 themes that people show up with in varying degrees of flavors, but varying degrees. But there are certainly topics that are common to our human condition. And so I've organized those around 4 different kinds of categories. The first one is self-awareness. So things like your inner critic, how to deal with that. That, by the way, is the most common coaching topic that I deal with, bar none. The imposter response. I've got a chapter on feeling like an imposter. How to be more self-compassionate. How to more accurately assess yourself, because we're so hard on ourselves, aren't we? How to deal with fear, and then how to navigate stress and the self-care aspect that is required on that. The second sort of big category is around goal attainment, and people are chasing their dreams, trying to move forward in their careers. So, it's things like engagement, how to be more accountable and hold yourself more accountable. How do we develop our careers? How do we discover our passion? What is that thing that's really, truly calling us? And how do we know it? Change and growth, how to navigate change when the ground feels like it's moving underneath us. How do we navigate that? And then finding joy. And this is, I just had a book release party, and I wrote a song called Joy. If joy was a color, what color would it be? If joy was a flavor, how would it taste? Things like that. And I pulled everybody up on stage. Well, not everybody, but I had handed out all these, little rattles and shakers and stuff. And we had a huge pile of people up on the stage having a moment of joy with us. It was fabulous. The third part is human connection. And that's really knowing relational awareness, that we're all wired differently, and how to communicate best with the different personality types to build relationships. What about leadership? What about teamwork? How to navigate conflict, how to build trust, and embracing our own authenticity, truly our own authenticity, and then gratitude. And the fourth section is about becoming a coach, because that is also one of the most common questions I get is, what do people talk to you about? And how can I become a coach and do this for someone else?
For sure. No, that sounds fantastic. And so how many of your, I'm going to call them normal coaching clients, the ones who don't come in for the music side of things, how many
Yeah.
of them eventually become clients of the music side of things?
They're very different. Being an executive coach, it's a different kind of a focus, especially with the C-suite folks. They're talking about their horizon, and, they may be trying to position themselves for something, or they're in conflict with their peers, that kind of thing. And so that nitty-gritty stuff, that's the daily sort of executive coaching piece. There's a very small number that make the transition. It's not something that I pitch. If it feels right for them, if it's truly the right practice, then I will say, I have this other program that might be beneficial. Just like I don't push my book on anybody that I'm coaching. I never require them to buy it and read it or as a practice or anything. It really needs to be, when you're coaching an executive or somebody that's, as you call them, a normal person, you really need to meet them where they are with what they need in that moment. If what they need in that moment is to dig deep on an emotional wound, or a topic that they're having trouble navigating that is really emotion based, then yeah, for sure, it's appropriate. The ones that come they've already thought about what their topic is typically. And it's not really about, how do I get a better job? How do I get noticed in this career thing? How do I get my teammates to do what I tell them to do? It's more about, how do I navigate this grief that I have? How do I express this unnameable gratitude that I have for this person that means the world to me. I don't have words for it. How do I do that? Maybe there's a family story that needs to be told. That's really different than, I want you to notice when you're, in this meeting, I want you to notice when you say this and notice how other people are reacting. That's a very different thing. So they're different.
Okay, so would your book still apply for both sides of, your clientele?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Because the book, I actually tossed around the idea of calling the book Humaning. How to sort of go through the world as a human, because we're going to all wrestle with these topics at one point or other. Maybe not all of the topics, but certainly a lot of them. It's just part of the human condition. And so I think, what qualifies you as a reader is that you're human. and you'll learn some tools. I mean, in the book, I talk about, there's neuroscience tips, there's stories about real clients and their practices. And a lot of the songs that I write are actually inspired by the coaching clients that I have, or their topics. So the songwriting, that's really the bridge between these two things. So a lot of those songs, and some of them may even be a practice that I turned into a song. Like there's one called Bag of Stones. And it's about, imagine you've got this big backpack on, and inside, it's really heavy, and somebody says, hey, why are you wearing that big backpack? What's going on there? And you take it out, and there's 3 bags inside, and one is full of gems and diamonds and gold. And those are the things in your life that are really important that you want to preserve. And so you repack those carefully. The second bag are things that they're stones that have been smoothed over by time, and they were useful to you once, but you're kind of done with them. And so you're going to leave on the path for the next person coming up behind you. And the third bag is just full of jagged, dirty rocks that you don't need to carry anymore. What are those? Let's name those. And then let's heave them off that big cliff over there, right? And repack, and you carry on your merry way. So it's programs, practices like that.
That's good. That's good. We should have a little therapy session here. Let me just turn off the video. And
there you go. I got you.
No, that's great. So did you have your own experience with a coach that kind of pulled you in? You had mentioned, people are always, asking, how do I become a coach? Is that how you got into the program?
Yeah. I think I've always had an inkling for working with people. I talk about this in the beginning of the book, around, I've always felt like that go-to friend that people talk to. And before I became a coach, especially when I was young, it was nice to feel like the go-to, to feel needed. But I'm sure I left a bigger mess sometimes because I just was unskilled at giving others advice from my very narrow little, frame of reference in my early life. But then, going through the program, and learning about it, it was deeply transformational. But in order to get there, I had to meet this spectacular coach. Her name is Ashley Chase, and she's magic. She's truly a magic coach, and she channels this creativity, this intuition, like nobody I've ever seen. And she said to me, "You're a coach. You really need to look at this as a profession, because you've got a talent here and you need to look at it." And I thought, okay, I'm curious, which, as we all know, is the number one requirement for creativity, is to be curious. And so when I started digging and I started researching coaching schools, and I found Integral Coaching Canada, which it's a, despite the name, it is a worldwide coaching school of such depth, based on integral theory, which means that it's very holistic. You hold the whole person as whole. And it was just, Ashley was right. This is what I meant to do. And to be able to find that apex between these two things in my life that have been so meaningful for me, that I can then sort of crystallize and shine a beam from for others. It's what I'm all about. My mission is to alleviate suffering and to illuminate new possibility for others. That's what that laser beam kind of does. So I'm feeling very, very fulfilled these days, creatively and in my life.
I love that. And what I love about coaching, it's different, but it's not different from counseling or therapy, but it's very different in the sense that you're walking alongside a person and helping them to find the root of their problems for themselves, to solve problems for themselves. You're not sitting there saying, and here's what I prescribe you do, and there's so much more to be said for a good coach sometimes than for a counselor, because I've had rough experiences with counselors for myself, and it's one of those things that also coaching is much more holistic, because if depending on the program that you are or choosing, or the coach that you're choosing, they might even look at your physical, your mental, your spiritual, all of the things, because they all work together. So I am a huge proponent of good coaching, and so I love that you have found it, and you just seem to ooze the what it takes, the charisma and what it takes, the personality to be a good coach. Absolutely. No, you can tell you're not trying to sell somebody something, and that makes a big difference.
It really has to be right for them. And back to the coaching versus therapy thing. I think both are such useful tools for humaning. And it really depends on what the person shows up with regarding what's called for. Sometimes therapy is absolutely, and I often refer clients who show up with a therapy topic, which is usually like, therapy works present moment backwards, right? It is unpacking the stuff in your past, your family of origin or your childhood or early years, to help you understand your present. Coaching works present moment forward, where here you are finding yourself in this current way of approaching a topic, and you would like to get to this new aspirational way of approaching that same topic. What are the things that you kind of have to do in between to move yourself from your current way to this aspirational new way of being? And it's typically about things like limiting beliefs, right? How we see the world through this little lens that we have, to the exclusion of what's outside of the lens. That limiting belief sort of shapes how we go through the world, which is the actions, the behaviors that we do. And it also informs the things that we check around us to reprove that limiting belief, right? Like, for example, the world is a dangerous place. That's a limiting belief. That impacts how I might go through the world, if that's what I believe, where I'm making myself small. I'll never be the first one to put up my hand. I won't go out after 6 o'clock at night, etc. I check for things like news reports, for colleagues getting fired, for, the guy that was shot in the parking lot down the street from me. Those kinds of things prove my limiting belief. But what's outside of that may disprove that? How are you safe in this moment? That's kind of the difference, I think, between coaching and therapy. And I've often done them in tandem, where I've worked with a person's therapist to really double team this particular topic.
I think that's great. And I agree. I think that, there is definitely a time and a place for therapy, and there's a time and a place for coaching, but yeah, they can absolutely work together, because what you said is, it's true, like you're trying to unpack the past, but you can't live in the past. You have to move forward. And so to have a coach pick up right there where you are and say, let's walk this next step while you're dealing with some stuff at therapy today. Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, so we're to the point where we're going to flip the script, and I'm going to let go of the reins, and it is now your turn to host the show. So take it away.
Oh, wow. So I'm curious to know more about you. When we first said hello, just before we started recording, you said you were super interested in this topic because you have a musical background. I want to know about your musical background and how it fills you up.
Okay, so music has just always been a part of me. Like, everything is a song, every morning is a musical, right? Like, it's a Broadway around here all the time. And so that's fun. I started playing the piano when I was little, and I didn't love it. I never had a great teacher, and so I never stuck with it. But 6th grade rolled around, and it was like, hey, you can either be in band or you can be an art. And I knew, like, I mean, from kindergarten forward, I can't draw. Coloring inside the lines is not a thing that I was ever gifted with. That's just not me. It was boring. It was so boring. Like, art was boring to me, producing art. And so sixth grade rolled around and I said, all right, band it is. And so we went to the try out your instrument and see what you can play night. And so we tried all the instruments. And by the end of the night, they were like, you can play whatever you want to play. Like, you pick an
Wow.
instrument and you can play it. And I was like, oh, great, fantastic. So I chose the clarinet. Why? I don't know. I just liked it. It was pretty. Like, the shape of the instrument was pretty. And I thought, the clarinet it is. And so I started on the clarinet, and then reading music and playing music was just something that, I mean, it just happened. I don't know how I could do it. It just happened. And so seventh grade rolled around and my band director was like, hey, we need a French horn. Would you try playing the French horn? And I said, sure, why not? And so then I played the French horn. And then eighth grade rolled around and he said, hey, I'd love to have an oboe in. Would you play the oboe? And I was like, sounds fun, let's try it. And so a couple weeks later, I was playing the oboe. And so it was just a gift, right? It's just a gift that I was given. And so all through high school, I played clarinet and French horn because they had oboe players. They didn't need me for that. But it was good times. And so from there, I picked up the trumpet. The only instrument that I never really cared to learn to play was the saxophone, which I think is funny because that's one of your instruments. It's also the instrument my husband plays. And I'm just like, that's the one instrument I never cared to try.
It's so close to clarinet. It's very close to clarinet, nova fingering wise. Yeah.
It really is. And so I probably could if I wanted to, but the embouchure is so different for me. And so I kind of, college rolled around and I didn't go to a school that had a band or an orchestra or symphony of any sort. And so I kind of put it down for a while until probably a couple years ago. It's probably about 2 years ago. I picked it all back up again and I was like, I've missed it. And so, yeah, that's
once it's
that's
in your body
story.
and in your blood, right? It just doesn't go away. So you said you set it down. Why did you set it down?
Because I didn't have an opportunity. There were just not times where it was, hey, come play an instrument here or what have you. And I mean, I got married super young. I was still in college when I got married. And so then life just happened. And it was like, we lived in an apartment. You don't play instruments when you live in an apartment complex. Not where we were. And so I just never had a reason to pick it back up. But then our church has an orchestra, and when we joined the church, it was like, hey, look, an orchestra. I think I should play again. So
good for you. Yeah, I think once it's in your blood, it may lay dormant, from time to time. And especially if we can nail down the reason why we sort of let it go, when we pick it back up, it protects it from being set down again a little bit, and there's an intentionality, I think, in sort of playing with those things that fill us up and that feed us, that feed our creative spark, being intentional, even if it's only for 5 minutes. And you mentioned, listening to music in the morning and everything sounds like it sounds like Broadway in there, which that sounds amazing. I love to wake up, and I do that too. I play a lot of music in the morning. But there's an intentionality, I think, in spending that time, that quality time. It's a self-care ritual almost, whether it's writing out how you're feeling and turning that into a poem, or picking up a paintbrush and just adding a few little strokes to something you're working on. It's the practice of that daily habit that brings so much, that really fills our bucket back up. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I have really loved, and I'll just throw this out there, like, my father-in-law is like, he's an amazing pianist. Like he pretends that he's not, but he really is. And so music it's part of my husband's family. It's mostly my family. My mom, bless her heart, she just enjoys listening because that's all she got.
We need those. Us musicians need people to listen.
That's right. So when we had our daughter, he was like, the only thing I require of you is that when she's old enough, I give her piano lessons. And I'm like, absolutely, you will.
Yeah.
And so that's been something that they've done together for the last several years. And she is so good. And she's so, I love listening to her sit down and just play. She pretends like she doesn't know what she's doing. And I'm like, babe, if you would just sit down, like, you would be as good as Daddy Bill. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. And so
especially if she can be encouraged to sort of unfurl her gift, right? Like, it's great to learn the basics, and maybe what kept you from enjoying that piano experience when you were young, the teacher that had to, keep you really in a narrow box with a narrow lane. Once a kid's got the basics, encourage them to, look at a painting and play how it feels, as an example. Then they discover that it comes through them too. It doesn't come from them. Yeah.
Yes. No, it's been great. And she makes me so jealous because she'll sit down, she'll put her headphones on, she'll listen to a song, and the next thing you know, she's like pulling it out and doing it herself.
Nice.
And I'm like, that's crazy. I love it.
That's talent. That's great.
Yeah, it is.
Can I ask you one more question?
Ask as many. Yes, go ahead.
So I described my Song Stories music coaching program to you, and what might your topic be if you were to engage in this program? What might you write about?
That's a great question. Probably, and this phase in my life, like where I am right now, is very different from where I even was 3 years ago. And I think a lot of people would say that just based on the world today, where we were 3 years ago, and even 10 years ago, I was a very different person. Right now, today, I think I would say becoming a new person and embracing life where I am right here, right now, not getting so busy that I miss out. It feels like the last, 14 years, which my kid will be 14 in a month or two, and I guess 2 months, month and a half. And I'm like, where did the last 14 years go? And I look back and I'm like, what? I was so busy focusing on what I thought was important. And I've probably missed out on so much. So now, just the new person that I am, and embracing and enjoying the fact that I love the life that I have right now. And I probably wouldn't have said that 3, 5, 10 years ago. Yeah. So maybe transformation, metamorphosis. I don't know, something like that.
I love that. I love the metaphor. I mean, in coaching, we use a lot of metaphor. Remember that current way and new way that I was talking about? We'll have a metaphor for each one of those. And it's also such a gift for songwriting. And so metamorphosis, I mean, there are so many ways you could go for that. Well, you said something in your answer. You said right here, right now. And the funniest, it's so, I'm writing a song right now. I'm actually in the studio and we're in the midst of recording it. And it's called Right Here, Right Now. And it's about this very thing. And that was the mantra that I had sort of running in my brain when I did my book release launch, because it was a big event. And, I did a stage performance and I talked a lot about the book and blah, blah. But what I said to my husband before I went was, okay, occasionally through the evening, I want you to come up and grab my hands and say, right here, right now. And then just walk away. Okay. Can you do that for me? And I told my music partner, Scott, that as well. Like, just say those words to me, because I really wanted to be able to, in that moment, take a breath, feel my feet, look around and go, oh my God, how cool is this?
Yes.
Right? And so that Right Here, Right Now song came from that experience. And I cannot wait to release it because it really is, I'm at a similar place as you in appreciating the right here, right now. Because honestly, it's all we have. That's all we have.
Yeah. And I think that's been a lot of the process, is understanding that, we've watched so many people struggle and lose and just shut down mentally, emotionally over. And we had some family members who they've left us on the outskirts, and it's like, what? I didn't know that was going to be the last time we actually spoke. I didn't know, not because they're gone permanently, but because we've been cut out. But it's the same thing. There's still a grief that goes with, that relationship's irreparable, at this point. And so just appreciating the fact that what I have is what I need. And I'm very grateful for that. So, I think that's where I am right now.
Good for you.
I don't know.
That's a blessing.
It feels really nice. It is. It really is.
And it's great modeling for your child too, to be able to learn how to tap into that stillness of right here, right now. Everything is as it should be, to be able to just notice all of the things around you that support you, that love you, that allow you to be your fullest self.
Oh, for sure. And I grew up in a very loving home, two parents, still married, they're wonderful people. I have a sister, my best friend, all this stuff. And
Mm.
but there were a lot of expectations that were put on us. And
Mhm.
living up to those really high
Sure.
expectations sometimes makes you go, you know what? I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable. And as you become an adult, I don't know how to process this. And so that
Mhm.
has been it's been I hope that she has seen just in the last few years um, that there is more to life than living up to other people's expectations, because I have learned just in the last 2 years alone, after having published a book, I'm like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. You know what? Like, I don't care.
That's authenticity, right?
That's right. And so I want her to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're sourcing your value from within rather than judgments of others, which
And
is a huge coaching topic. I mean, that's what keeps us coaches in business. That one,
for
for sure.
sure. And creatives, I think we struggle with that a lot more too, as because we see that there's this pressure to live up to the hype or to be the next big author or artist or whatever. And you're just like,
Mhm.
you can't. You can't. You live up to your own expectations. You set the
Yeah,
goals and you meet them, and
yeah.
exceeding
Well,
them.
if
Then
you're looking at that, then your eyeball is on the wrong thing,
that's right.
right?
That's
And
exactly right.
that's a gigantic distraction from what makes you tremendously unique and
For
authentic.
sure. Oh, for sure. Oh my goodness, we could go on. Like, I
We
think this
could.
conversation has like so many rabbit trails we could chase, and I would be happy to do that. But I also know that duty calls and life and what have you.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I've enjoyed this thoroughly. It's just been such a pleasure and a delight to
yes,
talk to you, Jennifer.
absolutely,
Yeah.
same here. So tell us before we go anywhere. I've got two questions for you. The first one is, how can listeners connect with you and your work?
Online is the best way to connect with me and my team. You can do that through my website, leslierohonczy.com, and I'll spell that because it's a mouthful of consonants and very few vowels. LESLIEROHONCZY.com, or CZY if you're in Canada, because we say Z, not C.
Right.
Yeah, and also on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. I've got a presence on there. I don't do that other one. The other one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the owner, so
I don't either. I tried and I tried and
no,
I tried, and I'm not
no,
good
ma'am.
for it. It's not for me.
Nope.
But we'll make sure that it's all in the show notes so that they don't have
Thank
to,
you.
if they want to try to spell it, they can, or they can just click on a link and it'll take them right
That's
where they want to
perfect.
go.
And lots of details about that music program are on my website, how it's organized, some frequently asked questions, and all of that information.
Yeah, it's a great website. I was poking around on it not long ago. I was like, I just wanted to make sure that I was like understanding it. I'm like, no, this is very fascinating. I was telling my husband this morning, he was getting ready for work, and I was like, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I look forward to all of them, but I was like, it's a little more up my alley.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, hey, if you ever want to do a music coaching program, you let me know.
Hey, heck yeah. All right. You've had all this time to really think about the big question. So are you ready for your big question?
Go.
Okay. What is one piece of advice or encouragement that you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else today?
If you hear nothing else today, I want you to hear this. There are whispers all around you. I need you to listen to those whispers. You need to listen to those whispers. They're there. They're there on behalf of you. They want to come to life through you. And so trust that. Trust it more often than you want to. And just see what happens. Just experiment and see what happens. Treat it like a science experiment. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, no, don't be afraid. Like, don't be afraid of them. I think sometimes we go, I can't trust myself because I've made too many poor choices in the past. But the fact of the matter is, those whispers are there for a reason. And as long as they're not leading you into danger, by all means, what's it going to hurt?
It's just paint, people. It's just paint. It's just
that's
sound.
Right.
But you might get something so much more valuable if you just listen to the whisper.
That is good stuff. Leslie, thank you again for being here and hanging out. Like, we need to do this again sometime.
Deal. I would love to come on and talk to you about some of the other programs that I have. So yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's just been such a delight.
I agree.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.